Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to Hash Knife Ranch. And joining with me today is my son, Kalen. Kalen, what do we got in the chute for the day?
All right, so for today, we've got tack safety. And I'm going to start off with, I've got two things here.
Tack safety? You mean like pounding tacks in?
Yeah,
Don't hit
exactly.
your thumb?
No, so I guess that's a good place to start. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Western riding, well, I guess it's also probably like English and whatnot too, but
Right?
specifically horses, you're looking at tack, your tack. What is tack? Your tack is essentially your saddle blanket, your saddle, your bridle, your halter. It's really all the stuff that goes with your horse. Everything
Yeah.
that you need in order to move, ride, do anything with your horse. So I'll start with, yeah, go
I'd
ahead.
say it's the essentials, right? I mean,
Yeah,
because you could have something like some splint boots or
yeah,
something like that on them, and that's not necessarily uh, necessary to ride. It may protect them, but it's not necessary that you have to have it to stay on that horse's back and control them or move them.
right. So I think I'll start with the first one, and I'm going to share the screen real quick.
Okay.
So a couple weeks ago, it looks like October 8th, I'll move my,
Pardon me. Well,
oh yeah,
I'm
your
not
old
as young
man
as I used to
glasses.
be. Sorry,
So
my body says okay.
old Cowhand 2 Jesse. I think he's out of Texas if I remember right. Oh nope,
Okay.
Boomer Sooner. He's Oklahoma. He
Okay.
shared
Yeah,
this.
no doubt.
He shared this, and I know you and I talked about this
Oh,
kind of prepping for the episode for a second, but
yep.
It just kind of take a second, and anybody who is familiar, what's wrong with this picture, and we'll just kind of give you a second, look it over.
Ooh. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, and I'll use the cursor here to show it's this cinch, or the latigo actually specifically.
Yeah.
It's missing, and I'll show you why. You
Well,
zoom
you know
in.
what? There's an interesting thing about this, though. Okay,
uh,
go ahead. Yeah.
I'm trying to zoom in. It's causing me problems, but essentially you're going to see it ripped right here.
Yep.
It's not a cut, anything like that. It may have stemmed from a cut, but you'll even see the back cinch here, that strap. It's a shorter cinch, and
Yeah. That.
it normally gets tagged. It looks like about here.
Yeah.
This latigo's at least 2 times as long as that on a normal day.
Oh yeah. Three times, 4 times sometimes.
Yeah,
But the back one you're looking at is the billet to hold the back cinch on, and it's doubled.
right,
You see, it's doubled, and it's got some stitching on it to hold it together. So
right.
it's super thick. Yeah.
But this just kind of backstory for this guy. It sounded like he was riding out on a horse. Good thing he's got a good horse, nothing bad happened. But it just popped. And like I said, it probably stemmed from maybe a small cut or something, but he had it nice and tight and snug, and he was probably going uphill or something, and it just popped and it ripped right off, and next thing he knew, he was in the dirt. So
Yeah. And if you look at that, I'm looking in the center of it to see if there was a hole there where the tongue of his cinch buckle would have gone, and it doesn't look like it. It looks like it just comes straight across there, and that's you normally wouldn't have one that deep anyway, because it's only coming down about where you would take the first turn to go
right.
through your cinch buckle and then
Yep.
back around. So, but if you look at the top of the rigging there where it meets the ring coming off of the tree right there.
Yep.
If you were to take a look at that and you were just looking your latigo over, there's not an excessive amount of wear. It's not tore there. That you got some thickness, but it makes you wonder how dry that leather is, because if it rips like that, it might have had to start somehow, like you said. And if it's dry enough, it's not going to be pliable. It will rip.
Yep.
But his saddle, looking at the stirrup fender there, or the leather, it does not look like it's dry. I mean, it looks like he's got some life to that leather. But yeah, that's interesting.
But I know you were talking about a small story too, right? That happened to you.
Yeah, I was about 17, and we were up elk hunting, and it killed a couple elk, and we decided we were going to get these things out whole, which was crazy. I mean, we wouldn't do that now. I'd just hack them up and throw them on the back of a horse and pack them out, and you're done. But we had decided, there's a couple of bulls. We're going to pull these things out. It's going to be a kind of a joyous celebration. We had a good year, and I'm on a horse that I trained. Actually, I think it was my sister's horse. Big old mare, not my sister, the horse. But I'm pulling. I got a rope on this elk, and we're pulling it up an incline, and I mean, she's digging hard. She's really trying. And there was a couple of guys with us. There was like 4 of us out there. A couple of friends of mine and their dad. We'd go up for a week anyway. I'm pulling hard, and she is really digging and pulling into this rope. And all of a sudden, we hear a pop, and the next thing you know, it's one of those sudden realizations, like, where am I? Here I am, sitting on the saddle, on the ground behind her, looking right between her hind legs. I mean,
behind the mare. Yep.
Behind the mare. I mean, it happened so fast, and exactly that's what happened. Is I had that it was actually the billet break. It wasn't the latigo. It was this short piece that looks like the rear cinch on the front. That broke at the rigging, and back cinch was fairly loose because she'd been working pretty hard. I think the breast collar also turned loose, and I mean, it was just like bang, just sitting there. I was like, holy crap! I'm glad she's as well broke as she is. And they looked at me and they're like, my God, this looks like something out of Blazing Saddles that would happen.
Yeah,
Everybody started laughing, and so then you've got to kind of jury rig things together and work through it. But yeah, and it can happen so fast. I always, as the older I get, I think about my grandpa was about my age when I showed up one day at the house, and he is just a scab all over one side of his face, and he's sitting there. He's not moving too much, but he was a tough bugger. He's getting things done, and I go, "What happened?" And he said, "Well, bridle rein broke on this mare, and she took off, and he could not pull her around, and she was going to head off over a bank, and he bailed at about 58 years old. And he was pretty dang lucky, but a simple bridle rein. And I think about that more and more, climbing on these colts. I pull on those things, man. I make sure that they're oiled and strong, and that, they're not going to bust on you. But yeah.
Well, and that happened to me too. And that's why I thought we should do this episode. It's important to check your stuff. You taught me that when I was really young, and I didn't really understand it that well, and I've taken it more and more to heart because of the small things that happen. But it was actually, I think it was Yanni, the one Parisian I've been able to train.
Oh, yeah.
And thankfully he was very easy to just maneuver and stuff like that. So it wasn't a big deal, but I felt something, it just felt loose, and it was the same thing. It was a rein, and it was right where the rein connects to the bit itself on that ring, and it was the leather that had failed me. And it wasn't necessarily the leather, but the leather stitching, the tie, it had broke, it rotted out. It was just dry rot.
Because on that, you probably had a piece of leather that went through the bit and had holes in it, and the rein went between the two pieces like that, and the piece of leather went through, right?
Yep.
Is that the kind? Yeah. Okay.
That's the exact one. You know which one it is. It's the full cheek light leather.
I've only got a half a dozen of them.
Yeah. Well, fair. But no, it's one that we've used on all the brand new horses where it's the full cheek, and we use it. It's used on every horse almost. So it's used a lot. So that's the problem. And I even specifically checked that at that time. I had checked just before the ride, which was funny. And everything worked out. We were in the 20 acres doing a first, second or third ride outside of the corral, and it felt loose, but we made it back to the corral. I let him go. I then picked it up, and I think I went over to Cloud, and I picked him up, who was a lot more high energy, and you kind of need to have him have a little bit of strength in your reins to hold him back a little bit. And I put the bridle over his head, and the next thing I know, one of the reins was on the ground. I hadn't gotten on him, nothing. And I was like, what is going on? I look, and again, it was that stitching. It failed, and all it was the stitching had dry rot, so we had to fix it, that night. But
And it was just lucky that was between horses and not
yes,
on a horse, especially at that stage.
and that's why I say, check your check, because again, you told me a long time ago it can save your life. Well, what would have happened if he would have just taken off, and just like Grandpa, he was experienced enough to do that. I may not have been that experienced. I could have just run into a fence and gotten hurt or something. You never know. So
Well, and
check
a
your
one
stuff.
rein stop is pretty important, but a one rein stop without being able to pull them back and hold them back
Yeah,
is another issue. You can turn them, and that's all you would have is just a sharp turn and hope
you're
you
just
can
gonna
get
go in a
them slowed
circle.
down. Right. Well, you don't go too far if you're going in a circle, but how fast is that circle and how big is it? Especially on a colt that's, not that old. And when they don't have the ability to, gauge your weight yet, because
Yep.
you're getting on their back and they'll trip, they get their feet all tangled up sometimes because they're not used to you being up there and packing just this giant backpack on them. So yeah, there's all kinds of things. You don't want to pull them around too hard, or you'll trip, or not enough, and you have a runaway and can't control. So yeah, it's a bad deal.
So I think with that, we've got about 4 minutes left on the clock, and I'll share a screen one more time. And this is more of choosing your stirrups with
Oh,
with the utmost I don't know care. So these are specifically, I follow Bronc Riding Nation. This is on Facebook, and this was I guess this was shared 4 days ago. And they essentially, in this little clip, it talked about the importance. They even said, since oxbow stirrups were created, they've been known as coffins, and this
yep.
is precisely why I hate oxbow stirrups. I know Grandpa liked them, but I hate them. They're very circular. Your foot doesn't get it. You really have to push down to get full purchase, but they're easy to
Well,
catch.
yeah, they're designed to sit in that little area from the sole or your shoe or your boot
Right
where
here.
the arch is, and right in front of the heel. They're designed to stay
Yep.
right in that spot as long as you have pressure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's an application for oxbows, and I've got some on some saddles I use and some I'm not. But yeah, you can slip through them a lot easier, and they tend to make my feet go to sleep sometimes on a new colt when I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the feet. But yeah, it's oxbows can be, they can be killers because you get your foot in through that and you can't get it out. Only thing you can hope is your foot comes out of the boot before they get drugged to death.
Right. Well, and I think that's the important part here is it's granted, this is a bronc riding event in a rodeo.
Right.
So it's supposed to be essentially an extenuating circumstance that has been made to light to be a common circumstance in this particular setting. But with that, this guy, I would guess, was probably getting bucked pretty good and thrown to the offside, and his near side leg got thrown and essentially drug over the horse. And
yeah, it
this
looks
is
like
what happened.
Yeah, it looks like he couldn't clear his foot from that.
Yep.
And as he come over, it picked that stirrup with him and got caught. Yeah, that's a bad day.
Well, lucky for him, you can see his foot's exiting, so he'll be okay. But what's the worst case scenario? Your foot gets stuck in that stirrup. Guess where you're going to be for the rest of that ride? Right underneath his legs, and you're going to feel it. So, like I said, tack safety was kind of the big one, and I think that was kind of the message, is just make sure you check your stuff, make sure it's good and serviceable, much like you check your own vehicle. That is essentially your vehicle on a live animal that makes its own decisions. So make sure you check that, and then make sure you also choose the appropriate equipment you want when you want it, because if you're not familiar enough or educated enough to use it, sometimes bad things can happen. And that's obviously an educated individual. He's a pro rider, I'm guessing, and it still didn't end out very well for him. So
well, and there's so many things that you could say about this, and it depends on the animal that you're looking at too, where you're at in their stage of training, what they can do as a trainer. You just don't go slap something on their face and say, "Oh, this will work." I mean, you have to work up to some of these things so it's more and more gentle. So,
Yeah.
what do you think? You put this one out to pasture?
I think so.